Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. Today we have Netflix 184th film from 2019. It's the crime drama mystery Rattlesnake. This is directed by Zak Hilditch, stars Carmen Ejogo, Theo, Rossi, and Emma Greenwell. I'm Jesse, and I'm here with MJ. Hello.
Hello. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. I meant to check this. I was about to check this just before we went live, but I remember, I think it was when we did In the Tall Grass, which feels like it was about like 7 or 8 episodes ago, which for us is 7 or 8 weeks. And I'm like, they were talking about how they were releasing all their Halloween slate for October 2019. And it just makes me feel like we've done like 7 or 8 movies in the space where Netflix probably released them across like a 2-week period. That just, I feel like, oh, they must have really spread this out. It's like, oh no, they just released like 3 on this day and 4 on this day.
Yeah, well, we did mention that, didn't we, back when we started off? Yeah, like you said a while ago now, but they had this Netflix, was it Netflix and Chills horror slate for October
that's right, Chills
2019. So it was In the Shadow of the Moon started it off. Then we had In the Tall Grass. Then we had Fractured. Then we had Eli. And now we got this one. Yeah.
And I feel like we've that's probably been, honestly, since In the Shadow of the Moon. Was that meant to be a bloody Halloween one? But that was like 12 episodes ago for us.
It's so true. But that just shows how much content that they're putting out at the moment. Well,
it is non-stop. This was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, nearly 2.5.
Exactly. So we'll say now we are probably going to spoil this film as we start to talk about it. So if you want to watch Rattlesnake, give us pause, come back later on, because we start off with our Fast Flicks where do a quick summary of what the film is all about. So what is Rattlesnake for you?
For me, it is, with her daughter's life appearing to be miraculously saved, a mother discovers that she now must pay the debt for her survival.
Yep, good. Very similar. I've just said a mum has to repay a debt for having her daughter healed.
That's it.
Done, dusted. All right. What did you
Gruesome
find out?
Debt,
though. Yeah, gross. Snakes. I don't know. We probably might talk about snakes later. I'm not a big fan of snakes at all.
I didn't know that.
Really? Snake spiders.
Yeah.
Yuck. Yeah. Anyway,
Great.
what did you work out about how this film was put together?
Well, the thing that annoyed me most about finding out anything about this film is that the Wikipedia page was terrible, and that's the go-to. That's where you start. You start at Wikipedia, you go to IMDb, and that's what sort of formulates what we want to find out. But there was really nothing on the production of this film within Wikipedia or IMDb, and it's so often the case where you can't find much information because the film itself is just like a small get in, get out kind of film that they're not really spruiking. They're not really trying to highlight before it comes out, because maybe it is what it is. So I found that interesting. I did end up finding a good interview with Zak Hilditch that he actually spoke about some of the workings of how this became a film. And the idea for him is that the concept itself for Rattlesnake had been in his mind for a number of years. He had an idea of the premise, and it wasn't until he had his first child that he kind of was able to, formulate a story off the back of that, I guess, understanding that paternal instinct, which is a strong component of this film. So once he sort of had a bit more of the idea in his head, he basically just put it down on paper. And then it got to a point where he sent it to his producer, and then about a month later, they were basically greenlit to make the film. And it all happened really, really quickly. And that was that. And that's again, I can't find too much else. The film itself was shot in New Mexico, USA. Zak Hilditch, who we've actually covered on this podcast before because he directed 1922. And I remember from that he's a massive Stephen King fan. And he kind of says that there is a lot of Stephen King running through the blood of this film. And it's kind of one of those films that he describes as being based on a Stephen King novel that Stephen King never wrote. And that's cool. I like a guy paying homage to someone who he has a lot of time for. Like he's grown up on Stephen King. He loves Stephen King, and he can't ignore the fact that his work is inspired by Stephen King. So he says that's the kind of vibe he was going for, mixed with his love for the early Twilight Zone. And that's kind of his present day take on all of that. So The film itself was released on Netflix October 25, 2019. So just a couple of days or 6 days before Halloween. And that's how the film got made from what I could find. The only other thing I wanted to mention, this was actually in the IMDb trivia section, under the spoilers as well, which is good that you've already done your spoiler alert. But a lot of the stuff that I read on that is just rubbish, and I find it very uninteresting. But I found it really cool because I actually thought this when I was watching the film, that during it, when Katrina's practicing how to use her gun, she's watching this YouTube video, which relates to the actual gun that she's purchased, and that video is real. And the guy on the video is a user called Hiko45. His real name is Greg Kinman. And he has a firearms channel on YouTube since 2007, and he's got over 4 million subscribers. I was watching that thinking like, man, I reckon they've actually just like got a guy to upload a video on YouTube for the sake of this film kind of thing. It's good to know they just used a real one.
Yeah, that was the only other sort of interesting thing I found as well. And, you know, if I was Stephen King, based on what you're saying, I'd be pretty offended because it does not have any sort of feeling of a Stephen King story to me. I think that he's oversold himself on this one 100%. And I
think it's the vibe though, right? Like you can see the bones of the story. You could be like, Stephen King wrote this story about X. How about, look at our fast flicks, right? If you were like, Stephen King wrote this story, you're like, yeah, that fits, that works.
Yeah.
Whether he got it right is a different story.
Yeah, sure. Stephen King would be adding some context into a lot more things as to what happens with, or giving the audience some idea about, you know, making their own interpretations about what's going on. Because, yeah, anyway, this is just talking about how it was made, wasn't it? Not my opinion. So let's have. I
was gonna say you've gone real early.
Oh, I'm really. I just want to get into this one because I think, you know, we spoke. The daughter's healed, and I was like, I want to know, like, and this is probably leading into that a little bit because I'm like, I need some context around what's going on. So I just looked at the cast list to see, like, if the healer had a name or something that could give some context around what this healing was for the daughter. And the character name for the woman in the trailer is just literally woman in the trailer. So it doesn't even have a character name. It doesn't have anything. That it's just woman in the trailer, not even healer. So that's how much effort's gone into this film.
I don't know if she is a healer though, because I think she's more just like a witch who just like trades souls.
Well, we'll talk. We'll talk a little bit later about what I think. I just thought it was interesting that Fractured, which we did a couple of weeks ago, so in real time, that was released 2 weeks prior to this, and there are a lot of similarities in these films about a parent and a daughter needing to go to a hospital. Just very interesting that Netflix sort of released these in such
a bit of a road trip.
Such a tight time frame. You mentioned, it did play at the Austin Film Festival just the day before it hit Netflix. And tagline. Let's get into the tagline. What did you say the tagline for this one?
You know what? I think I stumbled across it and I can't remember it now. So go, hit me.
It is horrendous. It is time waits for no one.
That doesn't ring a bell, actually. Time waits for no one.
No one.
You know what? Like it's literal in a sense of what happens in the film. It's probably not as profound as it thinks it is.
At all. It doesn't really add anything or give you any insight into what this film's
actually
about.
So good. You hated this film so much.
Revved up. All right. Translations across the world. French and German. It was called Bite of the Rattlesnake. So that gives a lot more context as to what actually happens. And in Greek, it was just called The Rattler, which I don't mind. That's a cool title.
Rattler. Maybe that's what they call rattlesnakes.
Snakes. Good. All right. Let's talk about the consensus. What have people been saying about their thoughts on this film?
Rattlesnake is sitting at a 4.6 out of 10 on IMDb, and that's off 8,500 ratings. And it's a 2 out of 5 on Letterboxd, just over 5,000 ratings. So it's on the small side. I don't think Netflix was expecting this to be a 50,000 rating kind of movie. But 4.6 out of 10 and 2 out of 5, it's not something that you'd be stoked about.
No, same with Rotten Tomatoes. Critics, 20 reviews, sits at rotten, 30%. And the audience, even lower. This is extremely low, 16% on over 100 people. So not a lot of fans for this one.
Not a popular movie.
No. So what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I'm going to probably come out of this looking like it was amazing. I thought the story was kind of cool, and I thought the good stuff was actually pretty good, and I thought the bad stuff was really bad. And it certainly let down what would have been an interesting premise. I certainly didn't feel what I was hoping to feel when I kind of figured out what was actually happening in the movie. I think I was watching the movie for about 20 seconds when I thought that this movie is going to destroy my anxiety, but it kind of pivoted from this idea of just trying to save your daughter from being bitten by a snake, and I think in the moment I appreciated that, because I don't think I was ready for 85 minutes of being stuck in a desert, watching you trying to save your daughter, which, you know, that's a film idea in another way and can be done well. But when it started and they're in the car and they're like, there's like this nice sort of bond between them, like, I don't know if I can do this. So I'm kind of glad that it went another way. But yeah, I thought it missed the mark on a few things of what could have actually been a decent story.
Cool. We've already said spoiler alert to this one. So nothing happens in this film. You have a road trip. Kid gets bitten by a snake. The kid's healed. The mum has to repay the debt for healing it. Mum stalks someone and kills someone. End of movie. Waste of time.
You can't say nothing happened when she kills someone. She wasn't planning on killing someone that day.
Game over. Save yourself the 80 minutes, and there you go. You're done. You don't need any other context about anything to do with this film. That is my summary.
You could say that about every single movie.
True. You probably could, but
I get what you say, that there wasn't a lot of fat in it all.
Oh.
like you she killed someone. That's enormous.
Oh man. Anyway, I've got rubbish. Let's I'm going to really struggle with this one, because to me this was, I don't know, I just could not get into this at all. Just gutter stuff. Characters. You might have some nice things to say about some characters.
Well, I'm curious. I can't actually remember what I've got to say, but anyway, Katrina Ridgway, played by Carmen Ejogo. I thought she did quite a good job. I think in general, the character itself carries the film pretty well, considering she's basically in every single shot of this film. Some of her decisions, and this is what annoys me about filmmaking in general, but some of her decisions really frustrate me. They come from that old school horror handbook of characters making bad decisions to make sure that they're put in bad situations. And I feel like audiences are maturing from this, and they want to see them make the same decision that you would make in that situation, but they still hit the wall. And that's why it's a horror film, and that's why they're under duress. That's what I want to see in a film. And I feel like this movie, she kept making decisions that I'm like, I wouldn't have made that decision. Most normal people wouldn't have made that decision. She kept making them. And I think that's a cop-out way of making a film, or putting together a story more so. But what I like about Katrina is she is a normal human who would never consider killing another person. But on the flip side, she would do anything to save her daughter. So she's slowly going through this torture and torment of getting to this point where she's made her decision in her head, but how can she go through with it, because she is not the kind of person who would just literally kill a person. And I think they captured that duress really well. I think I would have loved to have seen her like sleep for 3 days once this was over, because this situation would have just absolutely destroyed you emotionally, physically to an extent. But I mean, this would take every single ounce of your brain power and your moral, not even your morals. I just don't know how you kill a person, and I think they do that quite well, having that internal struggle.
Good. I completely agree. I think that the performance keeps this film afloat. Without everything that surrounds Carmen Ejogo, like, is not worth a penny. So to be able to be in every shot, hold that together, excellent job. I think that obviously you've got this character that's under stress, that you're a single mom, want to do what's right for your daughter, want to make sure your daughter survives. But I never felt like she was at the end of her ability to handle life, or that she needed to, there's no contemplation about how can I deal with this a different way other than to kill someone to save my daughter. And I think that's and I understand that's the plot of the film and that's where it needs to go. You just need something other than like, okay, a guy tells me I've got to take a soul for a soul, so sweet, I got to do that. And it's just really hard to, as a parent, that you want to save your daughter, but then you're going to come to this conclusion that, okay, I need to kill someone. And it just, I don't know, it's a film and all that sort of stuff, but it's fine if you'd seen some sort of transition of her struggling to be a parent and being like, I'm on my downward spiral. And they try to do this, like, she turns to drinking straight away, and she, starts knocking back alcohol and goes to a bar, and there's like a really lame sequence where, you know, she puts a hat on to go back into the hospital to sort of show her transition as a character. It's like this symbolic hat that she's wearing to show that, oh cool, I've turned to the dark side now, I'm willing to do whatever I have to do to keep my daughter alive. And I was laughing at these things. Like, I'm not supposed to be laughing at
I
these
think
things.
the hat was to disguise who she was.
Yeah.
So if she actually did kill somebody, then they didn't see who she was.
100%, but it was just like this. The emphasis that was put on it was like, this is that moment that we're seeing that transition, obviously for the disguise too. But, you know, then she goes and stand to get a coffee in this disguise, and like there's this poster that they highlight in the background about, you know, the plans, like when she's getting a coffee, and it's like, take life one cup at a time, sort of thing. Just these things that they're putting in there to make you be like, okay, this is what the character's doing. I just could not deal with it. Couldn't deal with it at all, and I just couldn't see the progression from her being a loving mother who's doing whatever she can for her daughter to then jumping to, I'm going to kill for my daughter. I don't know. I didn't feel that from her as a character. And that's not necessarily that's not necessarily her fault as a character. That's probably they needed to include. I know it's a short runtime, but you need something to include in there that she's gone through other options or tried to work out something other than Google searching a couple of things. Like, it was just, anyway, sorry, that's it, done.
Fair enough. You actually even brought up some things that I'd forgotten about that actually make the case stronger. I forgot about the Googling thing. It's like, at least she did the research. I'll get to some scenes I didn't like that annoy me by the way she did handle things. But yeah, I don't know. I did feel the slow rise of duress when it hit her, and then eventually it was, okay, how, now that I've decided this is what I'm going to do, how the hell do I go about it? But anyway, we'll probably keep covering this stuff as we go on. The only other character I do want to talk about is Billy, played by Theo Rossi. I mean, he's just a bad dude, and in this movie, he's a face of domestic violence and abuse, you know, of bullying and that testosterone-fueled power. And it almost just becomes a free hit for Katrina. It makes a different film if she has to kill someone who's innocent, or innocent being an operative word, but that kind of softened it for me a little bit. The sad thing is, you do get a sense with Billy that he's not just some small town hick. There is a brain in his head, which kind of makes his behavior all the more calculated and pretty insidious when you really break it down, that this guy who's got these moments where he's a normal, rational, friendly guy can still decide to emit this power on his girlfriend, and probably more than just his girlfriend, just because he can. And that's kind of gross. And yeah, I as I said, I think it softens the target, that they make it, like, as I said, a free hit for her to just kill a guy who's a bad dude. But I mean, I guess you can't ignore that this is trying to shine the light on what some people behave like.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said about Billy, and the front, like, there's a couple of little frustrating things that they included in with his character to try and be like, yeah, he's the bad. He's sitting there watching UFC. So what does that mean? That every male that watches UFC is like into violence and being an abuser? Like, there's just like, you can make a character sinister, evil by showing like the things that we'd already seen from him. And then, you know, the scene where the guns pulled on him, like, based on what we'd seen previously with his, you know, ability to use his horrible strengths towards women, like, I did not believe one bit that he wouldn't try and knock that gun out of her hand before they even got into the car. Like, they're just little moments that, yeah, I don't know. As a character, obviously he's the one that you want to set up as the one that you need to see get rid of, which is perfectly fine. I just think that the way that they got to that, they added things in that they didn't need to add in.
I don't think he was that one-dimensional, though. I think the UFC thing isn't a statement on if you watch UFC, you're a violent person. I think it adds to his character. And I think, to your point, I thought the same thing. When she pulled the gun on him, that's what got me. He assessed that situation really, really well. And he's like, well, there's actually nothing I can do about this right now. So I'm going to keep going along with this until I see an opening, which, like, I mean, you're not a bad dude to... He's bad, but you're not a bad person if you're trying to stop someone from killing you, right? So, but he was so calculated about that whole moment, and that's where you sort of think like, oh, this guy's not just what we thought he was on paper. So I'm not going to read too much into him as a character, but I do think it was an interesting point.
because based on what we'd seen with him with his partner Abby, if Abby had to pull those scissors off the drawer or whatever and turn them on him, can you imagine him being like, "Yeah, I'll go along with you in the car for a bit"?
Scissors are a little bit different to a gun. Like you grab her by the wrist and overpower her. Yeah.
Or even if she pulled a gun, like I've never, like, apart from some practice shots that we saw, on her second shot, she managed to hit a bottle, which was pretty impressive. So she learns very quickly how to shoot a gun.
She got closer though.
Yeah,
I've never fired a gun, so I don't actually know how hard it is.
Took a big step in. I don't know. I just, for a character that you want to demonize, I just thought that he would have kicked back a little bit like quicker than he did. But obviously, as you said too, like they want to try and show some different light to that character too.
Yeah, I have an issue with that scene as well. I don't even know if I mentioned it. Actually, I'm just looking at my scenes, and no, I didn't. It did annoy me that they really drew it out. Like when she pulled the gun on him in the room, like, why do we have to go all the way here and do all this? I just felt like it was a bit of filler. But the flip side is it does give you a slightly different view of Billy as a character too. Yeah,
we mentioned Zak Hilditch before. Obviously Aussie director, so that's a cool thing. Which is, he did these final hours. I think we mentioned that when we did 1922 as well. But I really enjoyed 1922 when we did that on the podcast. I thought that was a really good film.
I thought it was pretty good, and I really enjoyed these final hours when it released back in like 2013 in Australia. So he is talented. Like he wrote and directed these final hours, I'm pretty sure, and obviously adapted 1922. So he's working off Stephen King's story. And this one, he's obviously gone on his own again. Netflix must have been happy with what he did with these, with 1922, and said, "Let's give him another crack." I hope he gets another crack again.
Yeah, good. All right, time to talk about some scenes. What are some ones that you enjoyed in this one?
Well, the one that I probably got me most excited was at the very start when she came back to the caravan or the trailer when her daughter's bite marks were gone, the lady was gone. That old-timey radio had been replaced with a record player. That was the kicker for me when that had changed. I was so much more into it because I was like, where is this film going? It's probably the next 40 minutes was the worst part of the film, unfortunately. It's where it kind of got derailed. One thing I didn't like this scene per se. I mentioned that I hated a lot of the decisions that she made. I didn't like the scene, but I did like the fact that she thought of the old man as someone to kill first. I thought that was a savvy decision. Didn't work out that way. And obviously you're watching the film and you're like, it's way too early for this to work out. But I like that sort of thinking. It's how you would actually react in that situation and probably feel like it's a pretty crappy movie if it ends like, you killed a guy who was like 10 minutes away. The next thing I did like, I thought the kid on the bike was creepy as hell. Maybe it went a bit too far, but I thought that was really creepy. But I also liked her sitting in her car. This is when she'd failed to kill the old man. And just figuring out what the hell to do next. Like, I just don't know what that next move is. I was in that car with her thinking, like, I don't know. Like, do I just kill an innocent person? Where does this go? It's a huge decision. And, like, if you don't make a decision, then your daughter dies. Like, I felt that in that scene. And then that kid was creepy as hell. So, the last thing I liked was the final shot where the sort of hitchhiker scene, I guess you could call it. I just got a lot of questions off the back of it, I suppose. But, does he just roam the earth? I know we see all the other dead people roam. Can they both see him because they've had exposure to that magic? I don't know. I just kind of liked it. It left me feeling like, okay, this creepy world that you've kind of fumbled your way around. You haven't made it as clean as I think you would have liked, but it just left me with a little bit of excitement's the wrong word, but I was a little bit impressed by the way it was finished.
Cool. Yeah, I had that sort of I might ask it now in the question sort of time, because does that mean that really, because there's a specific choice in asking, like Katrina going to their daughter, "Oh, can you see him?" And the kid's like, "Yeah." So does that mean that maybe they're both dead? That they both died and they can see them because they're dead? Because no one else in the town can see these ghosts of people.
Yeah.
So
I actually never considered that. My thought was that Katrina's already been, she's, I guess, crossed that path to go to the other side to see them all. So maybe she hasn't lost that power. And my thought was that the daughter, because she was saved by that power, she's exposed to it as well. I kind of think of it as like these two people now have this sort of sixth sense like ability that they're not going to be able to shake for the rest of their life. The other idea is that like this magic, for lack of a better word, is only exposed to this particular small town. The fact that she was able to just search up those stories that were really specific to it. You know, does it actually happen elsewhere? I guess we'll have to wait for Rattlesnake 2 to see. But yeah, it was a open-ended question that I was happy with. I didn't need an explanation, but it got me thinking, which I enjoyed.
Well, yeah, I mean, did the rattlesnake bite actually just kill the daughter? And then mum was just so dehydrated, out in the middle of the desert, nowhere to go, couldn't change the tire, died of dehydration. The doctors keep saying, you know, you're really tired, you're really dehydrated.
Potentially, that's
and they're both dead.
It could fit. But then we just watched this whole fantastical movie of something that never happened.
True. For me, so we'll go back to the scenes. I've just got I feel like the concluding scene with Katrina chasing Billy through those Rocky Mountains. Just what a cool place to shoot a chase scene. Like if I was a location scout and I found that location, and having like when she does leave those Rocky Mountains, and you know, cool aerial shots of them running through, and then at the end you've got all of the dead characters sort of standing around the top of or the ledge. I thought that was a cool little place to shoot and a cool little way to do a chase scene. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, no, you're right. That was cool, and that was pretty eerie when you saw them all standing there.
Yeah. Good. All right. Well, what are some scenes that you didn't like in this one?
Yeah, a lot of these are things that were just like initially when the guy came in, he was a lawyer or something, but he was the first person to be like, "Oh, you've got to kill someone in the next 7 hours." I just thought she handled that situation terribly. Like, I get that it's absurd, but for me, I'm like, you know what? She did get bitten by a snake. Those snake marks are gone. That lady was gone. Something's not right here. Maybe something out of the ordinary has happened. I'm just going to listen a little bit and maybe ask. This guy seemed like more than happy to have a conversation. He would have answered any questions that she had. And I just didn't like that she just sort of threw it away. I thought it was really, really poorly handled. And what it did, it was opened up for the next scene to try and convince her that this was all real, which I thought was rubbish as well, with it, the second soul, I guess, in the truck when he comes there and we know the trailer's gone and she's in the middle of the desert. He just sort of comes in like super aggressively. I don't even know why he was so aggressive because the other ones weren't that aggressive. I think that scene was supposed to elicit a response of this really cool dread, but I just was trying to still figure out where her head was at, and this one just lost me, and the whole thing felt really disjointed, and it really didn't work for me. And that these two scenes are really key in setting up the rest of the film, and I thought they were really poorly handled, both of them together and on their own as well. So that was really disappointing, and I think you get them right, then this can change a little bit. So because I do like the idea, like it's kind of eerie, but the only other thing I actually have here is, again, just like weird dialogue stuff and I guess weird circumstantial stuff. When she was talking to the girl in the hospital about her dad who was about to die, and she just literally says, "Oh, it's such a strange thing waiting for your daddy to die," and then she didn't say anything back to that. Like she just sat there as if like, hang on, you've instigated this conversation. This girl's opening up to you. And you just say anything? Like that's just bad writing for me. You need. I guess there's an idea of being respectful and like I can't resonate with this. I can't know what to say, but it's just bad writing. I didn't like that. And then like, why was she in the room with the dying dad? Like, I just don't know. Like, hey, do you want to come sit with me? Yeah, he's going to die imminently. But yeah, come sit with me. We've just met. Like, that was just things like that just wouldn't happen in real life. Are things that bug me so much with these kind of movies. So, I got really lost in me.
Although even that, like, you know, she's in the room and then the phone goes off. She goes, "Oh, my sister's here," and she locks herself in the toilet. And she comes back out, and literally the whole family's there. I was like, the sister must travel with a huge entourage or something.
Yeah,
like she must have a minivan or a minibus with everyone that's there. Anyway, yeah, I agree.
The whole thing was terrible. It's like, oh my God, we need to have another scene in this film or else it's only going to be an hour long. So we need to have a failed attempt at her killing someone. The whole thing just was terrible.
Yeah. I've got a couple. The flat tire when Katrina he's like, fixing the flat tire. And then the kid, what's her name, Clara, winds the window down and just like looks at her mum and like says something. And then literally the only reason that we had that shot was so that they could wind the window back up and we could see the reflection of Katrina's face in the reflection of the window. So it could be like, oh, look, she's really struggling. I was just like,
I genuinely can't remember the shot you're talking about. I can't even think of it.
Like when she's changing the tire, it was just really awkward. Like the kid just winds the window down, looks out, says something, then winds it back up. Like there was no purpose for it at all.
Okay.
It was
like a cool shot that they couldn't actually find a way to put in, but they just put it in anyway.
Put it in there. Yeah. The Googling of stuff really just annoyed me. Like she looks up like very specific murders in the town that we're in. Like what gate, like why does she, I don't understand to start off with why she needed to look that up. And then the sunset, looking it up multiple times. We knew when the sunset was. I didn't need to see it on the screen 5 times.
And it didn't change. I would have been okay if I had to change like a couple of minutes here or there, because that's why she was still checking. But it's like, I remembered it. And my life's not on the line. I would have think you would remember it.
I would think so too. I think that's a really good way of putting it. In the car, she's listening to that podcast, the Tony Robbins podcast. And then when she's in the hotel room, she like does the quote to herself that the difference is not what we face. It's what we choose to do when we face it. This quote, these motivational quotes don't relate to killing someone. Like you're taking this completely out of context. Like I just really found it like if she was listening to a serial killer podcast or something, cool, that relates, but no.
I kind of liked her listening to Tony Robbins because at that point we didn't know anything about her. We didn't actually know she was a single mother even. And we're like, shit, daughter goes to sleep. She's like, okay, this is my time. I'm going to do my thing. And I'm like, okay, this, she's obviously struggling with a few things. She's trying to figure herself out. Like, okay, that's good context for who she is. But then when she tried to relate it for murdering people, I'm like, oh, like I don't think that was what it was intended for.
No, I don't think so either. Last thing, the kid on the bike, he was creepy. He was that was good. That was a cool little setup. But then when she jumps out of the car, and then like there's this car that swerves to miss her, and then the next shot shows that the car's parked parallel off the side of the road, and the car's actually traveling down the road this way. It was nowhere. The car was nowhere near her at all. The car was like
she was also in the front seat, so she must have gone back a long way.
Yeah, so she's jumped out of the car into the car park next to her, and the car's literally still just going down the road. It was just.
It's a good point. In the moment, that shot actually looked okay when she jumped out of the car and almost got hit. It actually felt pretty real. But you're right. Logistically, it was completely bizarre.
Yeah, because you follow, like, I agree, the shot out of the car, cool, that's scary. But then when you have the guy getting out of the car to see if she's okay, the car's parked in the middle of the road when she's in the bays. Yeah. Stupid.
Again, poorly handled by her. No, I'm all right. Sorry, I'm not having a good day. Like, appreciate it. Like,
yeah. All right, let's, what are some themes or some ideas in this one?
Well, I think there's a big conversation around the value of a life. And, I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole about what it means and what I think about the value of a life. Interestingly, in the world we've lived in for the last 2 years, with hospitals being overrun, like there's been situations across the world where they've had to decide on whose life is more important, and this film does that in a certain way, but more of a selfish way. You've got a situation where you actually can control it to some respect. What would you do to save your own child, and would you kill someone to do it? It's a fascinating question, because then the flip side is you got to kill someone and not get caught for it. I don't think we really went into that. I think the way that she did things ensured that she'd probably try and avoid it as much as possible. But my God, like it's a big question. We probably don't see that question asked in a lot of movies, but it does it well here. And the other main theme, it's probably like a double-pronged attack because they do tie into each other, is the whole idea of motherhood and parenthood in general and what lengths you would go to. And I think as a parent, this notion would resonate more. I guess you don't have to be a parent to understand how far you'd go for your own child, but they're two really big juicy issues to talk through.
Yeah, I think you touched on them really, really nicely, and sort of ties it like at the start of the film when Katrina's talking to her daughter and about having incidents like at school with kids, and she's like, we don't hurt people, and she says this to her kid, but on the other hand, and we see this through the abusive relationships. We shouldn't be hurting people. And that gun seller that she goes and sees, he's a little bit creepy, a little bit off, but his final line is along the lines of,
He got it.
I'm not gonna deprive a woman of protecting herself. So the idea is that we don't hurt people, but then to finish it with Katrina actually hurting someone anyway, it's a little bit iffy. Like,
it's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, really hard when that's what's going on.
That's what I was thinking as well. Like, because that's the extra layer of this film. Is this is someone who does not want to kill someone, and they've got a situation where I kind of think this movie would be better if she killed an innocent person. And it's a morbid way to look at it, but it's almost like really seeing lengths that you would go to. What would you actually do? So
especially if you're taking it from that story of protecting your daughter and the tiredness of being a single mum and doing whatever you can to protect your kids. That's that angle that would make sense. Yeah,
it goes to that level. And I think you look at the other souls that are in this film. You've got that Australian hiker. So she's clearly just like someone's found someone secluded and just killed her. They've got stories about someone just being stabbed out of the blue just before sunset. So they just found someone and killed him. Like that's the other people that have been in this situation have acted in that way.
Yeah, true. So maybe, yeah. Anyway, there's so much left open in this one that it's really hard to be specific to what's going on. What did you take away from this one?
I'm proud of myself for not talking about this until now, especially when you talked about the other titles of the film. But I don't think the title of this film does it any favors. I think on its own, Rattlesnake is a fine title to try and draw you in. But I think what makes this movie intriguing is the idea of what we've been talking about, a life for a life and a soul for a soul, and what lengths you would go to. But I think it also works with being haunted by these souls and spirits while counting down the clock to kill someone to save your daughter. Those ideas are really interesting for a film. I think the title Rattlesnake and probably the first 10 seconds of any trailer or any ad that you'll see for it will suggest that this is a movie about a mum stranded in the middle of nowhere trying to save her daughter who's been bitten by a snake. And a feature-length film of that is a very different proposition to what this film actually is. And I think this film has nothing to do with snakes. Like she could have been bitten by a spider. She could have fallen over and got an infection by hitting a rock. Like the snake itself isn't important. It actually kind of annoyed me when the snake came back at the end. I guess that was the witch lady or whatever trying to help out to, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's where further context behind, like what more added detail in the film would add to that title if the rattlesnake actually represents something.
Very true. But the things that are interesting about this story have nothing to do with a rattlesnake. And I think they missed a beat with it. I really do.
I think that's an excellent point. I agree with that completely. I think that apart from, so it bit the girl at the start. I think she saw it again when she went back to the area to go back to the location, and then at the end, which scared the dude. So you need more context. So I think you've nailed that on the head. Well done. The only thing I like, Netflix will greenlight anything, like literally anything. It's like this is D grade for me.
There's a lot of that. We watch a lot of this. We've watched every single Netflix movie up to this point that they've released, and there is a level of that for sure.
Usually I'm pretty patient, but even like this was a short run time, and I still lost my patience for this one. So
this is I don't know if I've written it down, Jesse. 182, 183, 184.
Yeah,
184th Netflix original film. I can genuinely probably name 50 that like suck. Like they're just bad movies. So, but then again, like out of all the ones they greenlit, they land on one that just absolutely nails it. And I guess if they don't take a punt on all of them, they don't get those little gems as well. And they've got the money to do it, which they're in a lot of debt, but they're obviously they're probably the biggest film distributor in the world at the moment. So whatever they're doing is kind of working. But if they've got time and money to do it, then just do it, because those gems are worth their weight in 10 bad movies.
Exactly. Did you go on to IMDb to look anyone up?
No, there was no recognizable faces in this for me.
I didn't go on IMDb, but I wanted to look up Tony Robbins because I wasn't familiar with the podcast. But I thought it was interesting, and I don't know whether this was a specific choice by them as filmmakers, that like obviously he's a real dude. charges like between 10 and 15 grand to like do a year's worth of like self-help sort of sessions and stuff like that. But it looks like he's had some allegations against him for being a similar type character to Billy, with clients and things like that. So I don't know whether this was a purposeful choice by the creative team. And obviously they're just allegations, but was that purposely chosen as the podcast so that we had that she was listening to, so that we had that reflection of what was going on? I'm not sure.
Interesting point. I mean, Tony Robbins is the biggest name in the world in that field, so I'm assuming it's more because of that. But I didn't know about those allegations. Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah. All right. Did you have any questions that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I've kind of been alluding to this the whole time, but do you think, I guess we'll call it that main scene when she breaks into the house and she's kind of watching the interaction between Billy and his girlfriend. And it's basically you're sitting there and it's entirely justifying why we need to kill this man. Do you think that softened things a little bit? I think one thing I loved about this movie, it was her trying to make this decision about who to kill. And it got to a point where like they were being quite nice, and it was like, oh, what time do I have to be ready for dinner? They've just had a shower together. Like, I get that this is also very much a window into domestic abuse relationships. But when they just made him like the biggest asshole in the world, and you're like, this guy deserves to die, I just felt like it softened the whole thing for me. I don't know. Did you feel that at all, or you just like didn't care by that point?
Well, yeah, like it's like who can make the choice about who deserves to die? Like it's like, like you just said, if maybe she accidentally shot the female instead, then you've got the whole idea of her having to deal with the idea that she's killed someone innocent, like you sort of mentioned earlier, that killing an innocent person changes the whole thing. So it softens the, rather than having this build up of she's going after someone who's a guilty party, then possibly.
What are the odds of going into a small town, the town center of a small town, and finding someone who's worthy of dying? Like almost objectively, like that guy should die. Like 95% of the world would probably agree that guy thinks he's doing. Oh, God, death is such a harsh way to end. But I don't know. I just kind of wish it was like she goes to this town and she's like, I got to kill someone, and I don't know. I wish there was a bit more of that. And I know that's a bit morbid of me, but it makes those decisions even stronger.
But
it softened it for me. That's all I'm saying.
Do the actions of her, and obviously as an audience, you want him to die for how the way he treats women. But does this make and we've sort of touched on this a little bit, does this make Katrina just as bad as them because she's actually killing someone who has the right to take a life?
No, I get that too. And that's the flip side of what would you do to save your daughter?
Yeah.
And then the idea of killing yourself is like, well, this is the only way out. And she did it because like she failed to kill him or she was going to do it because she failed to kill him, not because she didn't want to. But this is the only way out. Do anything for my daughter to live. But then you're obviously depriving your daughter, mother. Like there's so many questions here. And I guess that's probably why they went down this route. It was like, okay, we can make sure she did make a right decision. She's our heroine in this film. It just would have been an interesting film if she didn't have that easy target.
True. I think it adds some more complexities to it for sure.
Would have been a harder film to make, that's for sure.
Yeah, true. Anything else?
No, that was it.
Could Katrina just have been like mentally unwell, like we saw in Fractured? Is there a line? I don't know. Maybe it's just a draw, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think you would have probably preferred some kind of reveal
some sort of.
I guess the last scene could, but like anything alluding to it, which I don't think we really got. I think she's probably going to be mentally unwell after this. I think a bit of PTSD is going to come to the surface, but yeah, I would have. I mean, imagine that. Imagine like a bit of a reveal at the end where you're like, you got me.
Yeah, too close to. Maybe that was the end, and then they would put Fracture out 2 weeks earlier and go, we can't do the same ending.
no, pull it.
I'm sorry, I just ruined Fractured if you haven't seen it. Quote from John Serba. This is a review. This guy, which I thought was interesting. He goes, "Not all films need explicit resolutions. Ambiguity is good. It challenges us to piece together things or interpret as we may. Rattlesnake is a rough sketch, 100-piece jigsaw puzzle with 81 pieces missing, an unfinished draft."
81 pieces missing. So he
there's
reckons
19
it's
pieces.
1/5 of a film.
Yeah. And I think that's pretty rough, but I think that there are a lot of things that they could have included to give us more of closure with the ending, or give us more explanation as to what the rattlesnake meant, or give us more ideas. Like they're cool having these characters of all the dead people coming around. Give us some background as to what they actually represent.
Yeah, and I wonder how much it was like you have to keep this runtime under 90 minutes, and whether there were other things in there. And then, but if this movie was an hour and 45 minutes or even longer, I would have been like, oh, it doesn't have to be longer. So it is a tough one. But you're right. I think we were definitely missing context about what this mythical creature was that was able to save a life in order for you to give them another life. Like it's almost like the Grim Reaper type thing. And I didn't care that we weren't explicitly explained what it was or how it worked. In fact, I kind of would have been annoyed if we had got how it all works. But maybe just a little bit more would have been handy, because I do feel like there's something missing, and maybe it wasn't ever thought up. Maybe it was just the idea that worked. But it might have made things a little bit more made sense of a little bit more of it. I'm not too sure, but there's something we weren't missing, I felt.
Yep. Last one. So rattlesnakes, big thing in Arizona in America, and this film's in Texas, very close location wise. I did like a tour with a local native where we walked around and showed us like the skins of rattlesnakes, and talked about what happens if you get bitten by one, those sorts of things. So I just Googled it just to double check, because I'm like, rattlesnakes bites, they're very rarely like fatal. Like yes, you're in a lot of pain and you can die from them, yes, 100%. But I think the black mamba is like the most poisonous snake in the world, and that takes 20 minutes for you to die still. So to show the downfall of this kid getting bitten and then pretty much like going blue and on deathbed within like 2 minutes was a little bit unrealistic. That was just more
there you go.
Not question.
No, that's good. I mean, look, the average moviegoer doesn't know or probably care about that kind of stuff and just takes it. But that's that still is a bit sloppy.
Yeah. Especially it's a
maybe
title
it's different
film.
Little girls. Yeah, but you know what? You call it the film Black Mamba. Like
so you think it's about Kobe Bryant. Like,
exactly. It's got
Oh, good. All right, I think
but it shouldn't be called either of those things anyway. It should be called something else that relates to. Yeah, anyway, we've been there.
But I like that. I think you're bang on with that. Let's bring this together. Give it a rating out of 5 and draw our conclusions. What's your final thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think this movie ever really got to where it wanted to be. I thought it was an interesting premise with the potential to go places, but some of it just didn't work, or it didn't quite add up. And it's disappointing in that sense, because there is something there, but it's worth noting I still didn't mind it, and I appreciated the 85-minute runtime for what it was. It knew what it was, and maybe it suffered because of that, but I'm still going to give this 2.5 stars.
Nice, good. Yeah, I don't know. There's just something about this one that just didn't sit right for me at all. I've really enjoyed talking to you about it, because I think you've given a lot more context about how it can be enjoyed, and there are obviously parts of it that are engaging, and you've given really good explanations to a lot of the stuff. And I think it is good to see a film that attacks certain themes that are, or ideas that need to be looked at. Unfortunately for me, I think my ability to believe Katrina as a character sort of let this one down quite a bit for me, and I really wanted, and I don't want blatant explanations to everything that was there, because I do like having an ending like Inception that you've got to decide for yourself, but in that you've got clear options as to what the resolution is. In this one, there wasn't even an option for me to decide on what or how I wanted this film to be interpreted, and that sort of frustrated me quite a bit, because I loved making up my own mind, but this one didn't even give me options. So I'm giving it a 1.5 out of 5.
Ah, good. I was expecting a 1, so I'll take
1.5. So I'll give us a 2, which probably sits where everyone else has it anyway.
After all that, we agree with the masses.
After an hour of talking, and that's all we got. We're on socials: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Question 1: have you been bitten by a snake?
God, of course not.
No, me either. But there are people that have been bitten by snakes. Some interesting stories, I'm sure. No?
Oh, I'm sure, yeah. Maybe not in my circles, but I don't want to get bitten by a snake either.
Central Australia, like I'm petrified when I go up there that I'm going to get bitten because you see them everywhere. They're everywhere, and you do the training. This is what happens if you get bitten. Blah blah blah. So,
God,
definitely.
I'd
All
be
right.
doing everything I can to avoid that.
Avoid it. Yeah, exactly. We will be back next week for another episode from it's a film from 2019. It's a drama. It's called American Son, and this is directed by Kenny Leon. Stars Kerry Washington, Stephen Pasquale, Jeremy Jordan, and Eugene Lee. So get on board.
I thought you were going to say Eugene Levy then. And I was
Levy.
thinking we can get
Yeah, there's not many Eugenes.
Eugene, yeah, Eugene LE as well. Like.
Just LEE. Good.
Cool.
Yeah, that was good. Thanks for. I'm glad that we had some differing opinions. It always makes it a good combo.
Yeah, I kind of felt like I had to elevate the movie in some way, but it was also, I mean, there's only a level that you can really get to with this kind of movie. It certainly wasn't A grade.
Good. All right. I will speak to you next week.
See you then, mate.